Okay, well, we finally made it, Consumer Electronics Show, and here's the thing. I've been coming to the show for a really long time, don't even want to tell you how long, but it wasn't even called CES when I was coming here. It was called Comdex. But CES as an organization has been around for 67 years. It is the heart and soul of consumer electronics. But what we're finding and what we know is it's an auto show. It's also an AI show. And why is that? Because all this stuff is integrated. So we're going to take you inside in just a minute and show you all the great stuff that you probably won't see on shelves until at least summer, but maybe even into the future, into decades. We're so excited to have partners and sponsors that underwrite the conversation here at Mind the Machine. Primary is Ask Turing AI. You got to check out the website to get the essence of it, but the bottom line is bespoke, industry-specific data is what you really need for your business if you're going to be successful in AI. And Ask Turing, well, all you have to do is ask Turing to find out more. So thank you to AskTuring.ai. We are at the oldest, most seasoned, wise portion of the Las Vegas Convention Center where Sony and other huge multinational conglomerates and technology, this is where they set up. And here's the thing, Mind the Machine podcast is really going to unpack what's happening in robotics, what's happening in autonomous driving, what's happening in generative AI, but also what's happening in the future. So come along with us and you're going to see some great stuff.
Here's a grilled fish recipe that's just right for today's chili.
So a little bit of a dream sequence right now with Miss Catherine Baker. So Catherine Baker, tell them your title and what you do at Qualcomm.
Hi, Cheryl. Cheryl used to be my old boss, in full disclosure.
I'm so old.
Yes, she's my very young boss. She gets younger by the years. I'm Catherine Baker, and I am the Global Communications Lead for Qualcomm Technologies.
Yes. And so, Catherine, this is so exciting, right? I remember back in the day when I first started Qualcomm, it was all about EVDO and that you could send an email on your connected computer. So the days have really changed. So what's the big story with this? Or does this represent all of the hardware manufacturers for PCs?
Yes. So AI is the big theme for us, Cheryl, here at Qualcomm at CES. What you see behind us is a PC wall. So one of the big things that we've been focused on is taking the technology that we've built in mobile, right? Great CPU, great AI, great 5G, and bringing that and transforming the PC experience. So these are all Copilot Plus PCs.
Microsoft Copilot.
Yes, Microsoft Copilot Plus. They're a great partner of ours. We're the lead partner for all the Copilot PCs that are transforming and bringing those AI experiences. These are 25 of them, but we've got over 100 designs. They're in market. You can buy one. I use the Microsoft Surface laptop. It's amazing. Awesome. So it's just bringing that really unique AI experience
for the average consumer. And so in Mind the Machine, we really talked to innovators. Obviously, Erwin Jacobs was our first interview, and he really set the framework for how do you build an innovative company. Then we had Rodney Brooks, who invented iRoomba, or the robot, like utility. So from vision of Erwin to the utility of robotics to now this, what's the use case for the average person that says, what do I need an AI PC for?
Yeah. Well, I think in this digital world, right, we're all on our phones. We're so connected to all these devices. We got our watch, we got our TVs, we got our cars, we got our PCs, and we want them all to be more intuitive, smarter, to know where we live, what are our preferences. Yes, just connecting, anticipating our needs, and simplifying our life, right?
So good use case, like in the case when I was writing the book, I was I wrote this book, How to Win Friends and Influence Robots. Little plug for you. Everyone should read it. But it was really about, I had, 15 different browsers open, and I was running Poe, and I was running Perplexity, and I was running Copilot and Gemini, and I was trying to really test, and my computer literally ceased. It seized up. And so this is what I was like, oh my gosh, if people are really adopting and using Gen AI in their work and in their workforce, you're going to need this type of power. So that's what you're seeing, right?
Yeah, I think consumers want laptops that last all day, right? We're always on the go.
And
battery life,
right?
Oh, absolutely. Security, battery life. just again anticipating and making your life easier, whether it's productivity apps. So I'm doing email, I'm using Copilot Plus to summarize the emails that I didn't have a chance to get to. Hey, I need to write a last minute announcement on what Qualcomm is doing at CES. I'm going to leverage those tools, Copilot Plus, Writer, to just enhance it. And so that, and this is something that my boss talks about as well, we want more time to be thinking about creative ideas and innovating and meeting people and
maybe surfing.
Yes, or surfing, snowboarding, whatever it is. So just simplifying our lives. So Copilot Plus, Microsoft, all of our partners, Asus, Acer, Lenovo, they're bringing incredible devices, and the price point is down to $600. So that's what we announced at the show. A new Snapdragon chip that is bringing, yes, this great battery life, great Copilot Plus experiences.
Go buy a few laptops.
Down to the $600 price point. So if you have any money left over from Christmas, suggest you go buy a new Lenovo or Microsoft PC.
Awesome. Or your Valentine's, right? Okay. So looking forward just a bit. We have the car over here. So maybe we walk and take a look at the car. This was an auto show, arguably for the last, 4 or 5 years. Still very much is. So what do you want people to think and walk away with after they see this car? And can you talk about the partnerships and what's next there?
We just talked about PCs. So the technology that we create is powering so many types of devices. And your car is becoming more and more personal to who you are, right? People used to buy cars because of an engine or certain, I like these rims, and not really anymore. You have kind of the Teslas and the Rivians of the world, and it's really transforming the automobile experience. So we've been working with automakers all over the world. Our technology is powering every automaker's car. Mm-hmm. So here at the show, we're really showcasing, especially in this concept car behind us, how the technology AI is transforming the in-vehicle experience. Wow. So
I'm laughing at the Snapdragon rims. I'm gonna need those rims for my car.
Yeah. So this is our car. It's not a commercial car, but it's showcasing what's going to be coming to cars. As I spoke about, your car, your phone, like your digital life being more connected and anticipating where you need to go. So I'm in my car. I'm going to use the AI agent to say, hey, book me a reservation at dinner. I feel like sushi samba in Vegas tonight. Invite Cheryl Goodman, my great friend, and the AI agent is just in the car, on the device, is going to be able to make that happen for you. So that's kind of where we're headed. And here at the show, we're showcasing that type of technology and those partnerships. Okay. We love cars.
Yeah,
right?
Who doesn't love cars?
We spend a lot of time in cars, whether we like it or not.
Well, and it's almost like the mobile office, especially post-COVID. Yes. I can't tell you how much work is getting done in a car. Okay, so final question. Startups, right? So Qualcomm is all about enabling innovation, and we know this. And there's a lot of developer things that are happening with. So what do you think? Could you have a general statement about innovation, startups, and Qualcomm, and where those three things might intersect?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I think, we play in so many different markets. We're a San Diego-based company, as Cheryl, as you said. Our CEO was an old professor, and obviously making sure that all the products that we're making at the hardware level, they're in cars, they're in PCs, they're in connected fridges, they're in, so that working with that startup and developer community is really critical.
Right. So all those verticals have room for innovation.
Absolutely.
Through AI, not only generative AI, but the history of all things automated, machine learning, and so forth.
So we work across the whole ecosystem to make sure that our technology works in each of those markets, and we're trying to make our technology more developer friendly, to have the right software. It's just it's critical for us as we continue to expand. So love the startup community, try to be more developer friendly. That's where the company is headed. I think that's where everybody has to head these days.
When I think having the power of this, and having listened to Jensen Huang's keynote about the dropping prices of compute power, in addition to the smaller size of startups, it's like we are in this exponential age, which is why I'm so excited to have the legacy knowledge of someone like Qualcomm to be able to go, oh, well, they're kind of making all this stuff happen in a private, secure way on the edge with our mobile devices. So I swear it's not an ad. It's really true. All right.
I believe it, Cheryl.
Yes, she believes me. This is awesome. Any final thoughts? Anything you want to say about the show or anything else?
No, it's first of all great to see you. And yeah, I think we're just seeing how AI is transforming really our lives and hopefully freeing up time for us to connect. Yeah, connect physically with people. But technology is going to continue to play a crucial role. So what better place to be than explore the Consumer Electronics Show to see what's coming in the future.
You heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen. Ms. Catherine Baker, global dominant comms person for Qualcomm. As luck would have it, I'm running into what maybe I could call you Miss CES.
Not anymore.
That's right. This is Karen Chupka, and when she was here, and she and I last saw each other in New York at CES, it was the pre-show.
Pre-show press conference.
Pre-show press
Exactly.
conference. That's right. We were. I was at Sony launching iBone, and you were, tell us what you were doing there.
Still running. I was running CES at the time. And so, yes, we were very excited, getting pumped up for the show, showing some of the new technologies like IBO and robotics.
Yeah, so it's awesome. But now, here we are, 2025. I'm in an AI company, and Karen is EVP of National Association of Broadcasters.
Yes, the National Association of Broadcasters show. So actually, the great part about what we do now at NAB is our show highlights all the technologies and products that help storytellers tell their stories.
Right. Good. Which AI, Mitch and I were just talking about this, is that as long as AI has been around from an automation standpoint, it's really that generative AI and the creator content and now the digitization of video and all this moving stuff. So is that what excites you about? What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's so many things that are exciting. First of all, think about just how much now the creator economy has exploded and what it's doing now for, also just allowing companies or people to have their own startups and their own companies, right? But then also, yes, the opportunities that AI is bringing to the table with everything from being able to do virtual production as well as, helping to manage the workflow and everything else. Just going to be a great game changer for everybody.
Yeah, and it's super exciting because I hear economic vitality.
Exactly.
I hear startups are going to start faster, they're going to be smaller, they're going to move quicker, and my hope is that we can get that to all people.
Absolutely, and I think that's one of the interesting things is that now there's the democratization of content in a sense. So it doesn't cost a lot to make really nice quality content. And what's nice is you can come in at an entry level and then come to NAB show and find how you can scale up and build something larger.
Right. And I actually would say it's like, you're probably really, really excited because you've now expanded your universe because you have more people creating.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so that's what, in a sense, we have everybody from TikTok to television and TV shows to sports and broadcasting to cinematography. So it's all across the board of content and storytelling.
What would you like to share? Our audience is mostly technical. This is the podcast for Mind the Machine.
Okay.
So your predecessors in the show are Irwin Jacobs, Rodney Brooks, inventors of the Roomba. What would you like to tell our audience about the future of robotics, AI, and why they should go to NAB and then CES next year in 2026? We don't want to totally dish you, Gary. Just teasing.
Look, I think what we're seeing here is this is the infancy of all these technologies, and so they're just going to come out quicker and sooner. And as a result of that, you have to stay up to date on what's happening, right? So like at NAB show last year, we had something like 140 sessions just focusing on AI. Wow. So definitely a great way to learn how it's going to affect your business or how it's going to improve your business and what the future holds for you.
Awesome. All right. Well, you heard it here first. So thank you, Karen.
So great to see you again.
Great to see you. Yes. Awesome.
For sale. A ton of client examples, some of the voices on stage featured heavily in it.
Paul's been doing this show for a long time. So, Paul, we're going to start off. I want you to tell our Mind the Machine viewing audience, which you guys know this show is all about the confluence of being human in a mechanized world, all the things that happen in between. And we're here with Paul of the Software Industry Association. We're going to talk about policy. We're going to talk about other things. But first, we're going to talk about you.
Well, thank you so much for having me today. It's really exciting. CES, as always, is overwhelming with all the new technology and announcements. And so I come here not as a developer or a founder or an engineer, but as somebody who is really focused on public policy. So what kind of rules do we want to make around technology to make sure technology is safe, to promote innovation, those sorts of things. And my association, we work with over 300 companies in the technology and information space. And we work in Washington and also in the States and also internationally to try to shape policy in a direction that we think is beneficial. Beneficial not just for tech companies, but also generally for society. So it's very exciting to be here, not only to see the newest developments, but also to convene with other people who are doing similar things. Some of them from Washington, DC in the desert, they call it, but also people coming from all over the world and across the states. And it's just a great way to start the year and have discussions about really what we want to see in policy in the forthcoming year.
We're in this exponential era with AI, and I imagine that this is probably heavy on your agenda in terms of what's keeping you busy, the content that you're digesting to be that expert and really guide that public policy. What is the most exciting? We'll start with the optimism. What's the most exciting thing about this for you? And then inversely, what are you concerned about? And then how do we get to a point to where we can be good public stewards to the consuming public?
I think it is important as we're thinking about public policy, which involves not only new laws, but also efforts to kind of lift the bar on what is acceptable, voluntary standards, industry-driven events, collaboration among industry and civil society and government officials. I think it's important for us to put at the forefront the need to be responsible and for companies to be good stewards.
Good people trying to do good things are going to come to good solutions. We do live in a bit of a challenging world, right? And so the company that I have, FindGood.tech, the mission of democratizing information on AI, it comes through things like this. And I'm really glad that you said that people are educating themselves. And even yesterday in the keynote with Julia Sweet at Accenture, CEO of Accenture, she talked about, listen, there's not going to be mass layoffs, right? It's not going to be, but there are going to be. And so it is incumbent on us to skill up. And part of that skilling up is, how do these things work, right? And I can't imagine, as someone in policy, you're already dealing with the complexities. Policy is not, I don't think it's the easiest thing. There's a lot of nuances, a lot of things to consider, but then having to be a technology steward as well and kind of double click down onto that and say, now what are the table stakes here? What are the concerns? So how do you, I imagine I'm going to answer a question for you. I was going to ask you is how do you stay abreast of that? It's probably being at CTA events like CES, but what other things do you do to really, augment understanding these radical new technologies?
Well, that's a great question. And a big part of our job is also trying to educate people. So we need to make sure that we are at the forefront of kind of where public education should be and that we understand the technology we're talking about. I'm a firm believer that if you are going to dig deep into something, you should understand how it works. And if you are formulating policy, writing bills, you should know what you're trying to do. One of the first lessons in public policy is that you want to avoid the unintended consequences. And you only know about those if you understand what it is you're trying to do. And we will have intense debates and discussions about definitions in legislation. And so you need to be able to understand and communicate to lawmakers these sorts of things. So how do we stay abreast of these things? One way is going to events like CES. There's a large number of conferences, seminars, and so forth in Washington, D.C., but all over the world. So we attend those sorts of things. We read a lot. We talk to experts, build a good network. I have worked to develop relationships with people. So if I want to understand more about questions around cybersecurity and foundation models, there's a couple people I'll call. And they'll give me the information I need so that I can do my job and then try to go educate other people.
I love that. And I think that is really why shows like CES are so important, is because we bump into these folks. Sometimes they're on the schedule if we're good at planning during the holidays, not me. But so you bump into them in the hallway and you're like, oh my gosh, that's right. We got to double click on this issue here. And so that I think is key. What is the future of SIIA as a result of AI? I mean, I imagine your membership will increase because people are really, this is all a software-defined world. So I'll ask you that, and then I want to ask you another question at the same time, and that is, I have heard over and over again about the scaling laws. We're reaching this point to where we're kind of at this capacity. I say kind of because it's a bit of a debate. The trend that I keep hearing in keynotes are the pressure is now going to be on better software. Right. So I think that that's probably what's happening in your world as you increase membership. Is that a trend, a reasonable trend to state, ascertain?
Great. I'm going to try to remember all those questions, and I'll start with the top. I've been there since 3 years and 4 months, and just prior to that, I was working on AI and national security within the government. So that was my focus, and foreign policy issues too, because AI is everywhere right now. It's really dominating so many policy discussions. I think, I see one thing about our organization on the educational side is, one of the things that we do is we lobby. And part of that is educating policymakers across the board. But I also think that organizations like ours and CTA, who host CES, have a public function, which is because we work with a large number of companies, we're able to kind of make connections, bring things together, and sometimes actually achieve goals and convey those to the public. And I think that's really important in terms of educating people about what's actually happening. So what does the future hold? I mean, AI is really infusing every single line of business. There's a group of companies that I work with that are media companies. They are media properties, not your typical technology companies. Mm-hmm. And they're exploring right now, how is AI going to change our business and how are we incorporating it in our business? And so they've been able to come to us and we've been able to talk about some of these things and bring them together to talk about best practices, to talk about how they're going to face challenges in reaching new audiences and whatever it may be. So certainly for associations like ours, it is an opportunity to bring together more companies across the spectrum, from the largest developers in the world to startups that have no revenue, but are interested in being part of the conversation and have something important to convey that they feel is not part of the debate right now.
Yeah, something to include in the narrative. And I think that narrative is a little convoluted, especially if you're like, what's a parameter? What's a context window? What's a T-flop? Who's Jensen Wang? Okay, no one says that. Everyone's like, I don't even know what an NVIDIA is, but I know that leather jacket when I see it, So, I think is that delta in between the buzziness of AI into what does that really, really mean? And it's organizations like yourself, that's the guiding light, as I see it, to say, this is what you should focus on. This is what we're focused on. And then there's a delta in between that we have to figure out, well, what's next, right? So whether that's the scaling laws, taking a step back, you've been in industry for some time and been in policy for some time. Is there a pattern recognition that you see that you hearken upon and say, I remember in the digital music era when they were slugfests, and any insights that you bring forward for the context of today?
Great question. I mean, digital music, absolutely. I think anytime you have a paradigm shift, and the AI is a paradigm shift, but more so the public accessibility of AI tools is a paradigm shift. The paradigm shift, if we can point to an event, was the launch of ChatGPT, excuse me. I almost said GPT-2, but ChatGPT a couple of years ago. AI's been around for a long time. People are using AI unknowingly, but when the public has access to these tools and they can start to fiddle with them and see what they can do, and companies realize we need to find a way to incorporate this in, that's really the paradigm shift. So I think, digital music, it was Napster that really was that paradigm shift. We had digital music and MIDI way back, I remember, in the 90s, but
MP3.com.
You were MP3.com, right? Just before Napster. Right. And so I think the one that people talk about a lot is social media. And in policy circles, we hear sometimes, we don't want to happen to AI what happened in social media. And I think what they mean by that is there are some who have focused on the negatives in social media, and there are certainly harms associated with social media, but also many benefits too. And is there some role that policy could have or government could have in trying to mitigate those? Like, could we stop online bullying if we had acted earlier? And I think the jury's out on whether we can rewrite history and it would have done those things, but people are wondering that about AI. And you've seen there's a lot more education about AI, but there's still a lot of misconceptions, and it's important to do some education.
You're, in some capacities, supposed to have a crystal ball for all this stuff, right? How's this going to play out, right? And I'd say, too, is it looking back at the digital era of music and that digitization, there were things that, and I write about it in the book, is the observation of things that we did right and things that we didn't do right. But you know what? Innovation prevailed, and how do we listen to our music? So think of, in my humble opinion, is if we can focus on the utility and say, okay, we have to navigate around that. We're not going to see all the issues. We can only be cognizant. I think that's the best that we can do. What else could we do? Am I missing anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great start. I would just say, we need to look at, well, why is AI different? And is there anything that's unique about AI that would require us to address it in different ways? And so there's been a lot of attention on, you've heard about the AI doomers, but there's some truth to the big risks associated with AI. And I think that, it's important to be aware of that and make sure that we have guardrails.
Singularity. And then, I think it was Sam Altman just recently saying that AGI was now near term. I have my own opinions about that. I don't write about it in this book, but the next version, we're really going to talk about. And this is the fun part of the show, kids. Strap in. Have you ever tried to sit down and just connect to Bluetooth, or just set up your studio and you find that like 15 things go wrong? So I'm like not totally optimistic that robots are going to come kill me because their battery will die first, or they'll unplug themselves, or something like this will happen. So not to say that technology isn't capable of these advanced things, but I think this is a very complex, very hard thing, and that we should focus on what we at this moment can control, and it's probably not death and doom of the robots.
I agree with you. I think we have, in the United States right now, we have some guardrails in place to prevent that sort of thing from happening, at least from government action within the military. And I think that's really important to do that. So I think that there are some things that are unique about AI, but at the same time, an issue you brought up earlier, data. Data is at the heart of AI. And, in the United States, we are still grappling with what are the rules that we have around personal data. We don't have comprehensive rules around personal data. And so sometimes when we're in these discussions about AI, we come back and say, well, let's start with a strong foundation, and then we can build on it. And in the meantime, we want to promote AI innovation. From a policy perspective, we want to promote things like more R&D into certain things that are necessary. This doesn't get as much attention, but I think it's really important. If we want to be able to monitor AI, audit AI, if people think that's important, we need to develop standards to actually do that, and we don't have any yet. And we need to do a lot more work into that. Ways to democratize access to AI and compute would be world-changing. Right now, these tools are only in the hands of a few. Despite open source AI and so forth, I think having the resources to really do fundamental work is an area where policymakers could step in.
Yeah, and I love this, and I'm glad that you mentioned open source. I was fortunate to also, the founder of MP3.com, Michael Robertson, then started a Linux company. We had a Linux distribution called Windows OS. Kind of an interesting story there, but the net is that Linux in general is this wonderful, powerful way for us to all collaborate and build. But obviously there's the revenue models. It's not, no one's getting rich off of this. And so there's been a lot of interesting things happening this week as well. Mark Zuckerberg talking about, I think there's been a redefinition of what it means to be open source. Can't really speak intimately to those issues right at this moment, but I'm glad you mentioned open source. How do you represent and support and talk about open source in your organization?
From commercial development to policy discourse is very small. So we are seeing policy discussions about things that have just been announced or were announced a month ago. Whereas in the past, it may have taken a few months for the folks in Washington to really turn their attention to something, and then it was testing the temperature of the water before they really jumped in. Here we are from 0 to 60 automatically, and there's such a robust think tank community and civil society community and academics who are involved. There's so much material being generated on this stuff. And so open source reminds me of this, because what really heated up the debate about open source and AI was what Meta did with their Llama models and saying, we're going to go full open source. It mirrors some of the debates before about open source operating systems, open source cybersecurity solutions, open source encryption. But when we're talking about open source AI, AI is like more complicated software in a way. So are we talking about open weights that you can move around? Kind of like you would move around the what do you call them? The levers on a synthesizer. Do you know what I mean? Yes.
I love that
right.
you're saying this, because this is the heart of this book. Is if you know how large language model works, you can understand how terms are weighted and the biases and weight. And this is it. And these are values-based systems, right? I don't think there's going to be one AI for everything. I think we're going to have multiple AIs. I think they're going to be small language models. I think they're going to be spoken. We certainly know for industry, they really have to be custom. When you have a whole new vernacular, in order to leverage the automation, you got to be able to label it properly. All of these acronyms. I mean, I think about the military alone, so I am just so excited that you said that term, because to me, that's the heart. And then when you assign a value to it, this is where we get, maybe outcomes that aren't best for everyone in every scenario. How do you innovate around that? I mean, that's, I'm happy I'm doing podcasts and writing books.
I don't have the answer to that. And I'm also not in the business of predicting.
But you really know the nuance. I love that you really are so in lockstep with how it works and what those penalties are. I mean, This is why this is such an important organization.
Yeah, so we, when we're thinking about policy, you have to understand those things. And there can't be, one policy for all open source, because open source means a lot of different things. It's a catch-all. Sometimes you may have open weights. You could have a model with open training data where you could actually modify the data. You could add more into the training data set and so forth. I think, the federal government did an inquiry into open source, and there are some who said, open source is a big risk. If we get these powerful models out there, who knows who's going to use them? And it will definitely include bad actors. And there is universal recognition, at least among the non-bad actors, that we don't want bad actors to do bad things. But is the way to stop that really to prevent these models from getting out there? Because remember, it's not just companies in the United States that are going to be creating models, even though we may be the leading model developer right now. And there's also so much potential good that can come from getting this out there. And that is directly analogous to the debate that occurred during the Linux era about open source operating systems.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you brought that up, because it reminds me of chip wars, right? And we were just talking about chip wars, and it's like, if you look at how convoluted really the landscape is to not only create semiconductors from ASML to, Qualcomm and ARM and everyone in between, and I'm sure there's some great ones that you can talk to. It's like, this system is so complex, but at the end of the day, we do have to have national security. So it's like, I don't know, what is the number one issue that you would like people to think about when they think about AI? Like the table stakes, number one thing. For me, as a mom with two sons in the military, it's national security. I'm like, I want them to be okay. Maybe that's selfish, but national security. So I do think as an American, I'm very pro us protecting ourselves. What is it for you?
I probably have a few answers to that, but let me start by saying that technology embeds values. And, there's been a lot of talk about the artificial intelligence competition, with China especially. And I think, at the heart of that is really this view that AI embeds values. And what do we mean by that? We mean that, the AI tools that are emanating from our nation should reflect certain things that we care about. So there should be a appropriate degree of respect and protection for civil rights, for privacy. There should be limitations on the ability of the government to be able to access information of individuals. There should be a protection of free speech.
Anonymized in some way, anonymized data. Yeah.
I mean, and there, whatever word we use, there's some concerns around anonymization, but protecting privacy. For
Podcast
sure.
number 2, I'm thinking.
But absolutely, and I think that is really the starting point. And from a national security point of view, beyond that, there's 2 things. One is, are we incorporating AI for national security purposes? Defensive, offensive, whatever it may be. Is there value that we can get from AI? And the answer is there absolutely is. And we still have a long way to go to adopt AI in the appropriate way. But there's a lot of people working on this, and industry is really motivated to help the country. And then the other thing is, are we doing enough to balance the need to support our domestic industry, our domestic companies, against other policies that we have? So this may be getting too in the weeds, but we want to make sure that we're continuing to promote innovation in the United States, and that we're drawing connections with countries that are like-minded around the world.
Right. And I think that's a really good point, is because, just even looking at our university systems and how, they're diverse they are from every geographic region. I just did a citizen diplomacy project with Uzbekistan. And it was awesome. I was there for 10 days. As a matter of fact, I was at the Westminster University at an AI conference. It's a little water bottle. I haven't lost it, guys. I'm so happy. And it's not full of alcohol, even though I'm at CES. Coffee. But, seriously, commenting as the global connections are so important. And this was such a great and enlightening trip for me. And then also, I worked at Qualcomm for 10 years, and we have such a robust, diverse engineering pool. And I think this is part of the strength. So how do you protect, in the insular kind of American sensibility, but then also make sure you're open enough to be a human, right? Ooh, mind the machine. That's what it's really about. Like, not easy stuff at all. And I don't think, and on top of that, there's a pressure to accelerate and make quick decisions. So do really critical decisions quickly. Yikes. But hey, I'm an optimist. You're an optimist. I think we're going to be in good hands. So with that, let me get your closing comments on your aspirations and hopes for the future, the thing that you're most excited about, and anything that I didn't ask you that you would like to share with the Mind the Machine audience.
One thing I'd like to mention is education, and I think this goes to one of your core missions, which is to demystify AI for people, and also not speak down to them. That is so important. I think, people are smart enough to understand some of these things, and you don't need to understand things like as an engineer, but you have to understand how things work, and it can't be magic, as you like to say. And but we also need to focus on our young people, and I am very optimistic about some of the efforts that have been made to try to increase education into AI and technology in schools.
Right.
And I think that needs to continue. I think it's really important because we're going to be living in a different world. And so it's that next generation that I think has a lot of potential to realize some of these gains. And we also need to make sure that we continue to support education outside of technological AI education, because I think it's absolutely essential to help young people become productive members of society and contributing members of their civic land into their civic landscape.
And I love this education, and I'm just kind of double click on this a bit too, is to Sam Altman's credit, recently in an interview was talking about, what is coding going to go away? Well, it's not really about coding. It's about empathy, ethics, right? My understanding basics of how our political system works, but then also understand that we're a global society. So, these diplomatic citizen trips that I've done and have opened my eyes. And I think this is what, as a global economy, we have to have those soft skills to be able to navigate and drive outcomes that require the hard skills. Wow, this has been really great. Okay, so last final question. You've said so many great things. I imagine people are going to want to immediately mail credit cards to you, whatever, Stripe you, to be a member. How do they get a hold of you? LinkedIn? How do you like to be contacted to to expand the membership of SIIA for the cool kids?
Great. I'm skeptical of unsolicited credit cards that I receive in the mail, so that's not the best way to do it.
You're right. And not really the best technology either.
Yeah. But can I just say your point about soft skills is just so essential. AI is not going to replace the human. We need those human skills. So email, my email is plekas@siia.net, or you can find me on LinkedIn.
Mind the Machine podcast. I'm Cheryl K Goodman, your host, and I am so thrilled that we're able to cover everything from practical AI to romantic AI. Yeah, we knew it was going to happen. There's augmented reality, there's virtual reality, and then there's her. She kind of looks like Pam Anderson. I think she's not necessarily the AI librarian you might be looking for, but maybe something a little different. Bottom line is AI has to be a part of it in order to make it work, and we're going to cover every element from policy to generative. We're going to show you what you need to be able to understand AI from a CES 2025 perspective.